difficulties. The communication that I've gotten from several local folks is that they would request council not allow this type of encampment on, because if they live, someone lives next door to a church or a place that it's allowed, you know, how do they deal with it? So, man, to me it's a very slippery slope. You need a place for folks to be able to get protection from the weather and other related things. But just the sheer location of some of the facilities poses a real problem because the impact is can be considerably negative on folks living around the area. I, in the past, have had some conversation with a couple of the county commissioners about the possibility of maybe looking to do some kind of similar to this, like in the at the fairgrounds. And granted, it's only used a couple of weeks a year. There's sanitary facilities there, and it's a large enough facility that it's not going to be like someone living next door to a church. So I think it's a tough decision.
I think we may need to clarify from the city attorney's perspective, we cannot stop them.
Well, that's what I heard him say. Then what do we do? Just roll over?
Well, then we have development regulations
That's right,
that
we
would
have
protect the
regulations.
public health and safety, which is what, I mean, given the choice of no regulations and having a door open or regulating and being responsible, I would think the latter would be the choice.
All right. I am aware of one other public comment that came in to City Council. There wasn't any specific objection to any specific things in the ordinance, other than that they would prefer us to work on multifamily zoning instead of this. That was probably the gist of it. I think everyone received that as well. I don't know if there's any other comment. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, did you say Dale?
No, I thought you said
no,
yeah.
I think on this ordinance, it's more of a proactive than a reactive, and I really like to be more proactive on this kind of thing, instead of if we don't do something and then somebody would like to do this, then we are reacting to them and saying, you can't do this, you can't do that, and you can't, and they're saying, who comes up with all this? I thought it was federally protected to be able to do it. So I feel very good about what's in this ordinance, and I think it's a proactive move to make sure that we don't run into what you're talking about, Dale. Some of the issues that are going to obviously come up, like we've seen in Seattle, and we don't have to look too far on TV to see that. So,
Bob?
I think we're not the first city to do this. I think you grabbed a whole bunch of things out of other cities, municipalities, just doing the same work. I think that's how it was all put together, is that it's just not something that, you know, we just dreamed up for Mount Vernon. It's kind of a trend that you need to be proactive, as Gary said, because you know, one of these days, and probably rightly so, somebody's gonna, you know, put one in. So I think it's better to be proactive than reactive.
So there's a time limit on it. They can exist for X amount of time. I forget what that number was. Then it has to go away.
Yeah, under the proposed ordinance, which would be a continuation, this has been on the books for 6 months. And this is not atypical. You've seen this in other cities. Because it is a temporary, it's a 90-day encampment, after which they would have to find another site or another place. And that property would not be allowed or eligible for a homeless encampment for a 120-day period. Some of the policy reasons for that is think you've seen where the tent cities tend to turn into more permanent housing, and that creates its own set of issues with the neighborhoods surrounding it.
So if you have an encampment, it's there for its 90 days, and it goes away, and it goes down the street or somewhere else, and is allowed at a different religious facility, it sounds like. How soon before you can come back to the first one?
120 days.
But only once in a calendar year.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Thank you. And by the way, I think it's important to note, these are interim regulations, and the interim regulation for this here is to preserve and head off negative impacts by trying to preserve the status quo before you see a negative impact, and allow a full vetted public participation program that we've established, and we have a work plan to allow what the permanent regulation will look like. What you are adopting tonight isn't your permanent regulation. This is going to be in effect for the next 6 months. So while this is in effect to handle any use that may come in the next 6 months, you're also going to be going through public notice, inviting any member of the public to come in and make a legislative record of the Planning Commission and the City Council what they would like to see as a permanent regulation to deal with homeless encampments. So this isn't the final say by a long stretch of what you will see as a permanent regulation. This is simply an interim ordinance.
Okay. All right, any other questions before we have our public hearing? All right then, we'll open up the public hearing regarding the adoption of a work plan and extended time frame associated with interim regulations for temporary homeless encampments. If you're interested in speaking, you may step to the podium at this time. Anyone interested in speaking? Please state your name, city of residence, and limit your comments to about 3 minutes.
Joan Penny, citizen of Mount Vernon. Thank you, Council and Rebecca, for your work